So, I think it's safe to say that 2020 was a very strange year, especially in the NFL. We had the Oakland Raiders completing their relocation to Las Vegas, now playing in the Allegiant Stadium. We saw the Washington Redskins finally retire their name and logo, becoming the Washington football team for the season after multiple decades of controversy. Finally, the biggest impact of all was that thing that prevented us from hanging out with friends and family. It affected the season tremendously. It cancelled all preseason games and the Pro Bowl, suspended all international games for the year. For the most part of the season, games were played with zero fan attendance. The NFL also gave players the option to opt out of the season, which 67 players decided to do so. Not to mention we also had the postponements of games due to positive tests. And on top of all of that, we have to deal with the new collective bargaining agreement which was announced in March. Quite notably, it made the 2020 NFL season the first one in history to have 14 teams qualify for the playoffs. Also, it made the 2020 season the last season to have a 16-game regular season, as it's moving to 17 games next season. But I'm not going to be talking about those lucky 14 teams that made the postseason. They got enough praise and attention as they rightly deserved. This series, I'm going to be talking about those unlucky 18 teams who had to watch football home in January. What exactly went wrong with their season? And did anything actually go right? Do they have anything to look forward to? I'll be looking at that and more, so why don't you join me as I review their 2020 season. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about the 2020 season of the Atlanta Falcons. Yo, what's going on everybody? Thanks for tuning back into the new episode of my 2020 NFL review series. Quickly before we get into it, make sure as always to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at SportsButCasually to keep up with things I do outside of YouTube. And don't forget to leave a like on the video, share it with anybody you want to, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss when I drop the new episode. Now, let's get straight into episode 4. "28-3. Just uttering those two numbers not only sends Falcon fans into a frenzy, but also lets every football fan know exactly what I'm talking about. Come on, you all know that legendary meme. After suffering at the hands of the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, the Falcons have never been the same. The shadow of that blunder has loomed over the franchise like a dark cloud on a rainy day. After going back to the playoffs in 2017, the Falcons regressed to a mediocre team, going 7-9 twice and missing the playoffs. So this season is really big. Would the franchise return to some sort of success with an aging offense and a young and inexperienced defense?
Nope.
One interesting thing about this offseason is that the Falcons unveiled new uniforms for the first time since 2003. Nice. Anyway, the Falcons kicked things off in March when they released running back Devontae Freeman and cornerback Desmond Trufant. They were both Pro Bowlers with the team and a part of their Super Bowl 51 run, and they were both 2 years into their big 5-year deals. In free agency, they lost their leading tackler from the season before, linebacker Devondre Campbell to the Cardinals, and their Pro Bowl tight end Austin Hooper to the Cleveland Browns. In response to that, the Falcons used their cap space to sign defensive end and former 3rd overall pick Dante Fowler Jr. to a big deal, and they also signed former All-Pro and Offensive Player of the Year running back Todd Gurley to fill Devontae Freeman's role as lead back. So they replaced the injury-riddled running back with another one. The logic checks out. Other than that, they only signed players to cheap one-year deals. In the 2020 draft, the Falcons used their first-round pick to select cornerback AJ Terrell. Sure, it was a reach, but he still has a lot of potential to be a good corner. But the rookie class was alright. They got decent contributions from, as previously mentioned, Terrell and linebacker Mikael Walker. The Falcons were one of 3 teams to have none of their players opt out of this season. In terms of attendance, the Falcons didn't have any fans in attendance for their first 2 home games, but they did announce that they would open doors for fans starting in week 5. The start of the 2020 season for the Falcons was something straight out of a nightmare. They started the season 0-5 for the first time since their 1997 season. To rub salt into those wounds, this included 2 straight 15 or more point fourth quarter leads being absolutely wasted versus the Cowboys and the Bears. They became the first team in NFL history to do so. Huh? The Falcons losing a game after having a big lead? I wonder where I've heard that one before. After their 0-5 start, the Falcons fired head coach Dan Quinn and GM Thomas Dimitroff and special team coordinator Ben Kotwicker. Talk about cleaning house, huh? They named defensive coordinator Raheem Morris as their interim head coach. Dan Quinn has been their head coach since 2013, and outside his 2016 Super Bowl appearance, he's been completely average, only managing 1 other playoff appearance. Dimitroff has been their GM since 2008 and enjoyed a lot of early success with the franchise. He was named the Executive of the Year by Sporting News twice, in 2008 and 2010 respectively. However, their terrible habit of blowing leads continued, even with the new coach. In Week 7 versus the Lions, Todd Gurley accidentally scored a touchdown with 1 minute and 4 seconds left, which Matthew Stafford then proceeded to drive the team down and completely come back. They then blew a lead in Week 14 versus the Chargers. This loss also eliminated them from playoff contention and marked their 3rd consecutive losing season. And in Week 15, they blew a 17-point lead to the Buccaneers. What? The Falcons blew in a double-digit lead to Tom Brady? That's crazy, bro. And finally, in Week 16, they blew a lead to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then they missed the game-tying field goal. That's 5 blown leads this season. After losing to Brady and the Bucs again in Week 17, the Falcons finished their season 4-12, the worst record since their 2013 season. This included losing their last 5 games. They also finished last in their division, the NFC South, for the first time since 2007. At the end of the season, the Falcons had 2 players named to the Pro Bowl, kicker Young-Ho Koo and defensive tackle Grady Jarrett. Now let's get into the team stats for the Falcons this season, starting as always with their offense. Overall, their offense ranked 8th in the league, which is pretty good. But it was mainly a passing game, as we can see. The rushing game didn't make much noise this season, 27th in the league, 22nd in rushing touchdowns. Todd Gurley wasn't too effective, and his replacements didn't make much noise either. Now, their defense is where I want to focus on. They were tied for 19th in the league, but pay close attention to the passing yards allowed. Dead last, 32nd in the league, 27th in passing touchdowns. This is because not only did they have a young defense, but they had an extremely young secondary, which kind of explains why they got burned to a crisp. When you take a look at the advanced stats on offense, you can tell that they had not much problem converting, except when it went to the red zone. 26th in the league in red zone touchdown percentage. When you don't have a solid running game, it does get really hard to convert in the red zone. And as I already mentioned, their running game was not good this season. The advanced stats on defense show a slight better picture, We could see they were 12th in the league in blitzing, 9th in hurries, 15th in pressure percentage, So they turned out pretty good. Like the defense, everything, I want to say everything except the secondary was solid. Now let's get into something more positive, shall we? That's right, I'm going to be talking about their offensive and defensive MVPs. Starting as always on the offensive side. And I'm going to give it to wide receiver Calvin Ridley. This third-year wideout finally had the breakout season we've been waiting for him to have. With Julio Jones missing 7 games, Ridley had the opportunity to showcase his ability to be a number 1 wide receiver on a team. He was tied for 5th in the league in receiving yards, he was 9th in the league in passing targets, and he tied for 10th in the league in receiving touchdowns. Now on to their defensive MVP, and I'm going to give it to the Pro Bowler Grady Jarrett. Jarrett built upon his previous Pro Bowl season with an equally impressive campaign. As the best player left on the defensive line, he proved it by consistently putting pressure on the QB coming up the middle. He was tied for 11th in the league in QB hits. Despite claims from former GM last year about them not being in cap hell, for the first time in this series, we finally have a team that came into the offseason over the cap. The Falcons entered the offseason almost $21 million over the cap, even after rolling over $1.8 million from last season. So they had until March 17th to get under the cap. Then they still had to find money to sign free agents and to sign their rookie class, which could have cost them almost $13 million. Their draft class was expected to be the 5th most expensive in the league. So they quickly got to work, releasing veterans Alan Bailey, Ricardo Allen, and James Carpenter to clear out a total of about $14.75 million of cap. They then converted the contracts of Jake Matthews, Matt Ryan, and Tyler Davidson, which created an extra $27.45 million of cap space. In free agency, the Falcons let former first-round pick Keanu Neal walk and sign with the Cowboys. He was a former Pro Bowler, but 2 big injuries in back-to-back seasons, and this last season he was just never the same. In terms of signings, with not much cap space to work with, the Falcons signed their free agents to short and cheap deals. Let's hope they get good contributions from Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson. They entered the 2021 draft with the 4th overall pick, and the Falcons had numerous options available to them. Will they go with a quarterback and find a successor to the aging and expensive Matt Ryan? Will they go with the tight end Kyle Pitts, who's basically a wide receiver and a big jacked body? Or will they just trade down and get more assets? Ultimately, they ended up selecting Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. This is the highest a tight end has ever been drafted in the NFL history. So congrats to him. Moving on to June 6th, and that's where the Falcons traded their franchise wide receiver, Julio Jones, to the Tennessee Titans for a 2022 second-round pick and other assets. This comes 2 weeks after where he told Shannon Sharpe live on Undisputed on a phone call that he was out of there. It was pretty funny, so I'll leave a link in the description below. He's a 7-time Pro Bowler, not to mention the Falcons' leader in career receiving yards. I mean, if we got into the amount of records this man holds, not only in the NFL but for the Falcons, this would be a way longer video than it already is. So I can leave a link to them in the description below. Now, I do think their first season without Julio Jones would be kind of a struggle. Especially Matt Ryan, he's getting up there in age. He ain't getting any better, I can tell you that. But I think Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley and Gage is a nice core of receivers. You still have some weapons. You also have Hayden Hurst on the team, so I don't expect a massive drop-off on offense. And I'm also excited to see the Davis and Patterson backfield. I think that's miles better than what they had last season, their options at running back last season. Davis brings that power, Patterson brings that shiftiness. So I think they'll do better on offense when it comes to their running game. It'll be more of a balanced attack. But this season all depends on if their secondary can take the experience from last season and greatly improve. You know, it was the weak point on the defense. So if they show that up, I do think that their defense would stay more into average. And if the offense doesn't have a big drop off, and if they stop blowing leads, I do think this team could do pretty well. But I don't trust them not to blow leads. So I don't know, my 2021 prediction for them would be 6-11. Yeah, let's go with that. But yeah, guys, that is the end of the video. That was the 2020 season of the Atlanta Falcons. Make sure to leave a like on the video, share, subscribe, and I'll see you again for episode 5. Take care.